Welcome to our final sixth class called The Art of Forgiveness. This is our final stop in the journey of nurturing relationships. I've gained a lot from this course, and I hope you have as well. And today's the final night, but it's a sad time. I'm kidding. Thank God we're doing well. It's a good time to finish off on a finale. This is perhaps the cherry on top because this is very deep stuff. And it's interesting and it's fascinating. Before we get to there, I'll be showing you at the end of class the trailer for our next amazing course that begins on February 11th. The early bird is shortly soon. I will let you know. The email when is the early bird by, but I want you to join us. This is going to be amazing. Decoding the Talmud. The Talmud is the most important body of Jewish text. It dictates every part of Jewish life till today. It is also fascinating. It includes not only law, but stories, a lot of things we've learned in this course, in our previous courses, and as well as we will be highlighting some Talmudic pieces in this upcoming thing. Many people have learned the Talmud in Korea. If you don't believe this, I'm talking about South Korea. I don't know what happens in North Korea. Maybe North Korea also, but definitely in South Korea, the Talmud is actually one of the highlights of education. They know the Jews are very intelligent and smart because we've always studied the Talmud. But the Talmud is very complex, fascinating. We're going to watch a video at the end to get us excited for our next class. So are we ready? Alex, are we in? Maxine gives us thumbs up. We begin now with our story. So it's the end of Yom Kippur. Yom Kippur, holiest day on the calendar. Everyone's at the end of the fast. And it comes right before Ne'ilah, the closing prayer. Rabbi Cohen gets up to inspire the people in the synagogue. Place is packed with people. And Rabbi Cohen says, listen to the Sam, he says, you know, this is the day that God forgives all our sins. It's time for us to forgive others. So you may have a grudge against someone, something negative. It's time to forgive. I want everyone in the synagogue that's ready to forgive the wrongs of others to raise their hand. 80% of the synagogue puts up their hand. The rabbi asks again, it's Yom Kippur. God's going to forgive your sins. Forgive your fellow. The entire synagogue, 99.9%, raise their hands. Besides, you know besides who? Mrs. Goldstein. Mrs. Goldstein is over 100 years old. The rabbi turns to Mrs. Goldstein and says, everyone in the synagogue is ready to forgive their friends or enemies. How come you're not ready to forgive your enemies? You must have so many enemies. You lived over 100 years. Mrs. Goldstein says, I don't have to forgive them. I outlived them all. All right. We're going to have a fascinating topic. I'm going to share my screen shortly. This is the finale. We're going to also do a culmination of what it's hard to remember all the details, what we've learned in the course so far, but we're going to have a culmination of that at the end. So l'chaim to all. Thank you for joining us and make a blessing. Also thank God for his blessings, especially the release of 3 hostages in Israel. Hopefully all of them will be able to be returned home, and peace for all. L'chaim. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam she'acharonu b'dvarei. I see people have their cups on Zoom. Good. All right. I hope you're excited as I am. Just give some examples of why we're not talking about real levels of betrayal that will harm someone. That is a separate thing, but we will see that maybe there is even room for that in forgiveness. But let us begin. Let me share my screen. I hope everyone can see everything. So if you can't, please let me know right off the bat. Here we go. There we go. Can I see? Alex, what do you see? You see a small screen on the side? Good. I think we're good till we get to a video. We'll find out. Thank you, though. All right. The art of forgiveness. What are the difficulties in relationships? The answer is 2 human beings. Difficulties are inevitable. Automatically, there will be challenges in relationships. We're going to give a few examples. Welcome, Linda. Very exciting to have you. You're right on time. So we're talking about forgiveness. Automatically, yes, there's also some supper. There's hot soup. Alex, you can get her some soup, please. So just look on the screen. The spouse betrays another, let's say by lying. That can be very, very difficult. Parents disrespected. Number 3, friends fail to support one another. That can cause an issue that you may need forgiveness. Acquaintance refused favor. Or, this is, I think, very common, an insensitive joke. Someone thought they said something funny and they offended someone else. And finally, other disparaged coworkers, etc. So the bottom line is that difficulties in any relationship of all these different types are inevitable. The question is, what happens after one is hurt or offended? How do we go about forgiveness? And what's very unique, and we're going to learn this because this is even in modern psychology and wellness, is we'll advocate for the following. Look at the top of the page. We can be either the offender or victim. What about forgiveness? Who is supposed to forgive? The offender or the victim?
The offender.
Of course, the offender. Sometimes, when we see something pretty wild, of course, the responsibility is on the offender. But we're going to learn a little bit about sometimes the victim may issue actual forgiveness. I want you to join me on page 234. We have an exercise today. Page 234, exercise 6.1. You can write this in or use your brain. Listen to the first question. This is very interesting. What is harder, asking for forgiveness or granting it? What did you say? Asking for forgiveness. You're very vulnerable. But it's a hard question because think about it. What about giving someone forgiveness? You were actually hurt. There's not only like a clear answer. This is a gray area because let's say someone hurt someone else. Let's say it was even by mistake. To forgive that person, if you're the victim, takes a lot of courage. Maybe you don't want to forgive them. We're going to have to learn. We're not talking about someone, killing their son. But I want to give a wacko example. A wacko example. Now, I know this is a very tough story, and there's no good answer to this, but this is a crazy story that happened in Israel. Talk about forgiveness. I'm surprised they did not put it in the course. They must have prepared this course before this. But listen to this. There was, sadly, in war, friendly fire. There was a terrible story of soldiers in the IDF who were trying to rescue some type of hostage. This is many, many months ago. It's not recent. And they ended up, it's a very long story. It's very complicated. Bottom line is they ended up killing through friendly fire someone who was a hostage, who was very close to being, they didn't know if he was a terrorist. Now, you have to realize the terrorists are looking like civilians. It's very, we're not talking about like something close range. It's far, it's difficult, it's challenging terrain. They're maybe told by their commander, if you see something moving, you shoot. It's complicated. The mother of did you guys hear about this? I'm going to pull those up on Zoom about this. This is crazy stuff. Talk about forgiveness. This is like, I don't expect any of us here to be on this level, but it's important to know there are certain people. Believe it or not, so what actually, Israel, it's terrible. It's called when you get the knock on the door. I don't know in America if they, call you up, but maybe they should also, they have to do it in person, right? There's something in person. So they came, the whole squadron of soldiers came. Let's say, I don't know if it's 4 or 5 of them. Let's just say a group of soldiers came, and they obviously didn't identify which one may have been the one that shot the bullet that killed him. So they never really told the woman who it was, because that would be extremely difficult if you had a group of 5, right? But they said, this is the group that was trying to save your son, and terrible story. No one wants this, but this is the result. And it took her a while, but she forgave them. She said, I understand that you are under incredible duress, and if I was in your situation, but that's a high order. That's a terribly high order. But I wanted to share that with you, which shows you the courage it takes. I would say in that situation, it's harder to grant the forgiveness than to ask for it. Yes.
My uncle was killed in World War II by some friendly fire.
Wow. Listen to this.
I don't know who did it, but, yeah.
So Linda's sharing that's
In front of his brother.
Oh, so you know what? I'm sure there's also a lot of legalities to this also. But she's saying that her brother, her uncle, in front of his brother, was killed during World War II by friendly fire. Was he in the American Army?
Yeah.
American Army. Yeah. So I want to say that this question is a very good question, and the question is so good that's what will also dictate that we're going to learn. It's not only like, oh, well, obviously the burden applies to the one who is the offender, and that is true. But what if the offender's not ready? Can the victim be courageous and grant forgiveness? Final question in that exercise is, what does forgiveness mean? How would you define it? Now that is what this class is about. But if anyone wants to chime in what you think, in short, no long Megillas, what is short version of forgiveness?
Letting go.
Letting go, big one. Okay, anything else? If anybody's on Zoom, you can unmute yourself. I'd like to chime in.
Well, I've been thinking a lot. I believe in forgiveness. I'm willing to forgive. I do believe in accountability.
Ooh, a big risk of forgiveness is there going to be accountability. That will be actually discussed. If there's no accountability further, this is a very, very interesting question. I really appreciate Michelle. That's a good thing. Sometimes I'm going to give you spill the beans. If you think that through being forgiven, you may be harmed based on this forgiveness, you are not supposed to, according to Jewish law, forgive. There could be different levels. Instead, there could be, I gave you a very extreme radical story of a woman in Israel who forgave soldiers that by friendly fire killed her son. She saw the footage, she saw what it was, and she saw it was like impossible. But it's like he was so close to being saved. The saddest part was he was a hostage that was so close to being saved. Yes, Alan, you want to say something?
Let's just say I had a friend who's not a friend.
Okay, right, friendship.
Was forgiving them, and they kept repeatedly doing it.
Great. So Alex said gave someone once, twice, and then he said, listen, this is ridiculous. The person is not really learning their lesson or accountable for their actions. Good. So Alex is great. It's good to have this. I'm telling you, this class is going to be wild stuff. But I love that question. What is harder? And I would say it depends on the situation. Normally, it's harder to ask forgiveness. You become vulnerable. You say, made a mistake. But really, sometimes the person, it may have caused more pain to the recipient, the victim, and it's hard for them to grant forgiveness, to let go. Okay. Now, what's amazing is we're going to learn two models of forgiveness. We have discussed in our courses, I hope you know at this point, we have got how many souls? 2 souls. We have our vitality soul, sometimes called the animal soul. Just like an animal wants to live and it thinks about its self-survival, we as humans have that as well. Then we also have the godly soul, the Jewish soul, the neshama. So 2 modes of why we forgive based on an animal soul perspective, which is valuable and sometimes necessary, or the deeper level, which we're going to study about the godly soul. Let's now go to our next slides. Now, as we know, difficulties are inevitable in relationships, and normally they will weaken the relationship. The question forgiveness allows us, as you see on the screen, is can we mend that connection? Now, sometimes it's like a friend. So you decide, maybe I tried my best, but I don't want to continue this relationship. It's just negative. But let's say it's a family member. So you want that. It's a long-term relationship, right? So you want to establish the forgiveness. You understand what I'm saying? Wait, Linda, if you didn't get a plate yet, Alex, do you want salad or Alex, why don't you make or she can make her own plate. Linda, you make your own plate. Okay. I want you to join me on page text 1. I'm going to skip the video we're about to watch in a second. Let's look at the overview on the screen. We're going to first of all, do why forgiveness, the why forgiveness, and how do we actually go about it? Number 2, the how. Okay. So who wants to read? This is a long text. Anyone here? Linda, you can. Okay, Linda, you go start. So this is from a very important researcher, professor, who at the School of Stanford University, is a master on counseling and health psychology. You can look about him, Fred Luskin. Sounds like a Jewish name, I don't know. So one of the benefits, you know what? I'm going to actually do this before I read this text. Anybody on, you can answer this question. What are the benefits of, for the victim giving forgiveness? What are the benefits? I'm going to go even wild. Even in a situation where not necessarily has the offender done his job or her job, let's just call it their job, of asking for forgiveness. So before the person asks, you say, you know what, I'm going to forgive you. Or a situation where you tried, they're not being, but you say, you know what, I'm just going to forgive them. I'm just going to forgive them. What would be the benefit? And the animal soul is interested in self-benefit for just letting go.
And stop hurting yourself by thinking.
Wow. You know what? This is an amazing quote. This is one of my favorite quotes. Holding a grudge is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. So you think that it's only their problem, it becomes your problem, and you think about it too much. It's they don't pay you enough to rent so much space in your head. Okay? So sometimes holding a grudge, again, is like holding a grudge is like drinking poison and hoping and expecting that sometime the other guy's going to suffer from this. No, you're suffering automatically. 100% suffering. So there's a lot of psychological benefit to forgive. And that is what this next text is going to be. Text 1. But we're going to see a whole bunch of fascinating pieces, but go on, Linda.
Forgiveness is for you. Picture the crowded screen in front of a harried air traffic controller. Picture the chaos in the room and the jumble of planes on the screen. Now imagine that your unresolved grievances are the planes on that screen, and you've been circling for days and weeks on end. Most of the other planes have landed, but your unresolved grievances continue to take up precious airspace, draining resources that may be needed in an emergency. Having them on the screen forces you to work harder and increases the chance for accidents. The grievance planes become a source of stress, and burnout is often the result.
So now here are the highlights, continue reading, of what forgiveness does for you. You forgive, what is the benefit, even though you were hurt? Now we have to talk, it's not a switch or magic pill, button you press and there's forgiveness. It may take a duration of time, but when you do forgiveness, these are the benefits for you. So far, selfishly, you can even understand the qualities of forgiving someone else. Go for it.
Forgiveness is the peace you learn to feel when you allow these circling planes to land. Forgiveness is for you and not for the offender. Forgiveness is taking back your power. Forgiveness is taking responsibility for how you feel. Forgiveness is about your healing and not about the people who hurt you. Forgiveness is a trainable skill, just like learning to throw a baseball. Forgiveness helps you get control over your feelings. Forgiveness can improve your mental and physical health.
Now, all these things can be discussed at length, and you can look up contemporary psychology and all this stuff. But the bottom line is that even though forgiveness seems very divine, which it is, it can also be seen, and you can talk to your animals and say, listen, I don't want to be holding on to this grudge and drinking this poison for the next bunch of years. I want to get rid of it. Let me let go. So the animal soul can appreciate that. And we could talk in our minds to our animal soul and say, listen, we have, now, if this is small stuff, very advised. Just say, don't have to get a conversation with them. Someone says something to you. Now, the problem is if you forgive and you still bear those feelings, that's not real forgiveness. So that's a skill, like he says here, that you can learn. But before we go further, I want to show you a cute video. We're talking about the animal soul. Now, this video is important because we believe you can train the animal soul to do a lot of good stuff. So this story takes place between Maimonides, the Rambam, whose yahrzeit, day of passing, was literally, today's Wednesday, was Monday. In his time, he was the doctor to the Sultan of Egypt. Now, imagine a Jewish guy being the doctor in those days. That was incredible jealousy amongst the ministers. So they tried all types of ways to disprove his methodology and show the king that this guy doesn't know his stuff. The king didn't know that he was good, but every time. So they decided, Maimonides was of the opinion that even though you can train an animal to do tricks, like the circus, they do all types of tricks, right? Animals. But an animal, you can train them as much as you want. But an animal, at the end of the day, at the core is an animal, and you can never fully turn it into act and behave like a human. And this is the story behind it. The reason why we read this story is that even though it's important to know the animal soul can be trained to appreciate good things like forgiveness, but you can tell the animal soul, which thinks about itself, say, listen, I care about myself. I don't want to be holding on to this grudge. It's hurting my health. It's hurting my mental space. It's not keeping me strong or powerful. I'm always feel like I'm a victim. I got to get out of this. Oh, I'll go for forgiveness. I'll learn how to forgive another, etc. Great animal soul stuff. We now got to go to the godly soul. What is again, the animal soul approach that it's good for you is important to let sink in our hearts and minds. It's important. People should know it's good for you to forgive. Physically also, health-wise also. Here's the story of Maimonides and the jealous advisors of the king, where the jealous advisors of the king, I'm not going to steal the story, they train cats to be waiters. Imagine you're walking around at this royal sultan's palace in Egypt, and the cats are carrying the food. So that's going to be the story. And you're going to see Sam's going to like this part of the story, but I want to make sure those who are on Zoom can hear. So I try my best to share it correctly. If you don't hear right away, let me know, okay? Wes, you got me?
Yes, sir.
The story is told that Maimonides once had a disagreement with the other wise men in the court of the Egyptian sultan. The wise men contended that with sufficient training, it would be possible to change the nature of an animal, training it to be as gracious, polite, and as giving as a human being. Maimonides argued that it was impossible to completely change an animal's nature. The wise men spent many months training a cat to serve as a butler. They dressed the cat up in a little suit and trained it to walk on its hind legs. They taught the cat to greet people, escort them to their seats, and serve them food and drink. They then invited Maimonides to a banquet where they intended to demonstrate their accomplishment and to prove to him that an animal can be trained to behave like a human being. The cat graciously greeted Maimonides and guided him to his table. Once seated, Maimonides removed a small box from his pocket. From the box, he took a mouse and dropped it on the floor. Trays and dishes smashed to the ground as the cat abandoned his role as butler and scampered speedily after the mouse. And the debate was effectively concluded.
Okay, I thought that's a great story, but it does highlight the importance of noticing that even if something's effective in the animal soul is not always going to be trained. We try to train our animal soul, but for most of us, unless we're a tzaddik, our animal soul has its place. You can train it to do different things. Here's an example of using the animal soul to do a divine attribute, which is forgiving another. And there's selfish reasons, and I wouldn't even call them so selfish in a derogatory sense. I would say there's good reason to convince animal soul that for your own physical well-being, it's a good move. Okay, next. That is one model. We have concluded that model. We're now up to the second model, which is the godly model. So every single class, by the way, the past 5 weeks, this is the 6th, we have discussed animal soul versus godly soul. Here is the godly soul version. Godly soul sees things in a very different way. This is based off Talmud. Remember I told you our upcoming course is called Decoding the Talmud, and Alex is excited about it, and I'm excited. My wife's excited. So let's read a little Talmud about why the Torah gives a commandment. Don't revenge. Now, that's a very human trait. We all feel upset about something. We want to take revenge. it's against you to take revenge. So the Talmud offers a very interesting analogy of that, and that we're going to offer too. Michelle, read text 237.
The Torah states you shall neither take revenge from nor bear a grudge against the members of your people. But how can we be expected to forgive in this way? Consider this example. If while cutting meat, you cut your hand, would you retaliate in kind against the offending hand? I would.
So let's give an example here. God forbid. I mean, anybody that works in the kitchen, sometimes you're cutting a vegetable or onion, and you cut a finger of another finger. Now, we're not talking about something terrible like something that you use a Band-Aid and gauze for. Nothing like you're going to the emergency room. But even if you go to the emergency room, I'm just trying to give a contemporary example that happens to all of us all the time. The other hand is not going to say, "Oh, this hand did it." When I hurt the other hand, that'd be ridiculous. Because you're one person. So that wouldn't solve problems. That's just create double problems. You have a issue with one hand. So the Talmud says, you guys are looking at each other as your separate entities. You got to look from the soul perspective. We're part of one big, larger being. The Jewish people, says the Talmud, is like, this is actually the Jerusalem Talmud. We're going to discuss what the more classic Talmud. If you hear someone quote Talmud, it's usually the Babylonian Talmud, but there's some good nuggets and secrets in the Jerusalem Talmud. So right here, we will discuss the Jerusalem and non-Jerusalem, the Babylonian classical Talmud and the Jerusalem Talmud in this upcoming course. But for today's sake, we're just going to keep it simple. Talmud, the bottom line is we have to look at ourselves differently. It says the godly soul looks at each other and we're part of one big organism. The Jewish people have one body. So if one person hurts another, okay, we have to figure out how to, maybe there's talk about future, are we going to, is there accountability? Is there this? All those things are good. But the reason why we don't have revenge is because taking revenge is like cutting the other hand. The right hand got hit by the left hand will hit the right hand. Ridiculous. Now, this takes work to feel like that, right? It takes work. But that is the true way of the godly soul. The godly soul doesn't think about itself, it thinks about the other. It feels as we're a group. So look at this. What is the brains behind the Talmud in text 2 is that look at the Jews as one unified soul, one unified being. And we're not separate. But to unpack that, we have the Kabbalists. This is Hasidism, but this is one of the Kabbalists. Text 3. Alex, you get to read this, and then we'll give Maxine to read the next text. Alex 238. This is from Ramak, Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, who lived in Sfat, and I actually have been to his resting place. Go on.
All souls are united as one, and it's therefore appropriate to desire good for others, be happy for their gains, consider their dignity as important as your own. For you and they are truly synonymous. For that reason, we are commanded, love your fellow as yourself.
Amazing. There's a lot in this. I want to be honest, there's a lot to unpack here. It is appropriate to desire good for others. You want good things to fall upon other people. To be happy when things succeed for them. To consider their dignity as important as your own. The reason behind all of this, okay, my friends, is simply the understanding that we are one. So the soul perspective, and the more we get that result, the more we're going to look at each other as not separate. It's like, I've got a right hand, you're the left hand, we're part of the same organism. Join me on the screen. All souls are anchored in God and thus are inherently unified. See what's happening on the screen? You all come from the same source. Big yellow is like the one larger soul connected with God. So even though when we come down into this world and each in a body, we have our own mission, our own purpose, our own good parts, our own things we need to correct, we're connected. Taking revenge against another is like the right hand taking revenge against the left hand. Not a good idea, right? Well, next time you get a cut, first make sure you get a Band-Aid and everything else, but then think about this. You'll notice immediately, you're one being. It's a good meditation. The next time you cut yourself, again, God willing, you should never cut yourself, but we do, peeling, whatever you do, you're going to get a little boo-boo, God willing, just a little one. You're going to think about this. Okay. Now, 2 modes of forgiveness. Look at the screen. animal soul. Conflict is natural, so it's going to happen. But you can forgive others because you will get personal benefit, like we learned before. The godly soul is in perspective entirely. It's unnatural conflict. It's against the grain because we're all one. Shouldn't be a conflict in the right and left hand. Therefore, forgive to return to inherent unity. Okay, we're now going to take this from the Torah. We all are learning this week about the two individuals. A little surprise note for those who are online is that we usually have a minyan once a month, but my brother-in-law Chesky has been waiting to come here with his friends from yeshiva. So we're going to have rabbinical students here for this wonderful Shabbos this week. We're going to try to pull off a minyan. Bottom line is, if you're here, 10:30, we'll have services. It'll be a lot of fun. Kiddush following. Okay, back to our story. The Torah reading we're going to read this week is the beginning of the 10 plagues. So, story of Moses and Aaron is the beginning. This week we're going to cover 7 of the 10 plagues. The last 3 are next week's Torah reading, which we will have an official minyan. And Alex will be our guest speaker called the Shabbat of Inclusion. So mark it on your calendars. Shabbat of Inclusion, February 1st, 10:30 services and Kiddush. And Alex will tell us a little bit about his journey. And his title is, "You don't succeed, try and try again." Alex is amazing, and we appreciate him here. Anyhow, back to our story. So that's next week. Okay. Moses and Aaron. Moses is an incredible leader. He's the real limelight. But his brother Aaron, we're told, was a peace achiever. He always found ways to get people to give forgiveness. Everyone familiar with that? We're going to read a fascinating tale. In text, I said, Maxine, you're going to be reading this, so unmute yourself. Text 4. And you ever heard of a white lie? What's an example of a white lie? Good, okay.
But not say that. Just pretend.
Okay, example. Any others? Okay, good.
Did a good job shoveling the driveway or something.
Okay, good. Okay, good.
Walk.
Oh, pretty good.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. Okay, good. So we got our jokes in here. But Aaron, there is actually a space. Now, lying in Judaism is very, very serious. Okay. But there's space for creating peace. So do not a lie, but a white lie. It's even more higher level than the examples that were given here about my driveway and everything else. Okay. Text for Maxine, nice and loud.
When Aaron became aware that 2 individuals quarreled and had fallen out with each other, he would go and sit with one of them and say, "My dear, do you know what your friend is saying? He's utterly devastated and is tearing his clothes. He is saying, 'Woe is to me. How can I ever raise my eyes and look at my friend after what I've done to him? I am so ashamed for having wronged him.' Aaron would continue working with this person until he had removed the grudge from his heart. Aaron would then go and sit with the other party and say, 'My dear, do you know what your friend is saying? He is utterly devastated and is tearing his clothes. He is saying, "Woe is to me. How can I ever raise my voice, my eyes, and look at my friend after what I've done to him? I'm so ashamed for having wronged him." Aaron would stay with this second party until he had similarly removed the grudge from his heart. When the 2 individuals would later meet, they would hug and kiss each other in reconciliation.
Rabbi, we lost your broadcast.
I'm sorry, Rabbi, but we don't see you. At least I don't.
Yeah, so somehow you guys got disconnected. I don't know how that happened. You guys good? Okay, good. Sorry. Never happened before. We're back to our story. You heard about the kosher white lie? Yes, okay, good. I'm gonna go back to sharing my screen. So we know a little bit of the kosher white lie. I may go. No, I just want to make sure this actually works here. Yeah, we're on the right way. So look at my screen for a second. Aaron is the pursuer of peace. He says each side wants to do the right thing, and therefore he gets people on the same page. Now I want to ask you a question. On one hand, you could say that Aaron was just being deceptive. He was hacking them a chinik in Yiddish. He was hacking them a chinik. He was, oh yeah, this. What was Aaron really doing? And the answer that we will offer in this course is that Aaron saw them from their soul perspective. And he knew that deep down they really would forgive each other. They look at each other as one organism with a right and left hand. They don't want to argue with each other. If you have that approach, then you say, let me just get them to feel that way in the conscious, in the manifest reality. It wasn't hacking them a chinik. This is really how we each feel deep down because of our godly soul. So sometimes we're not so in touch with our godly soul. So we don't feel it. So Aaron got them to say it. How did he get them? He hacked them a chinik, each one. A kosher white lie. But I will say that how do we get more in touch with our soul? And that is any mitzvah we do, any good deed we do, lighting Shabbat candles for Shabbat, prayer, coming together for holidays, celebrating holidays, making Kiddush on Friday nights, eating chal on Shabbat, putting a kosher mezuzah in your home. Any mitzvah gets us more oriented with our godly soul, and we're going to be more oriented on our godly soul. Also, we will have these wonderful qualities of being more forgiveful, and having that perspective of godly soul, that we're all really not separate individuals fighting with each other, and hopefully for selfish reasons being nice to each other, but rather we are inherently one organism and want the best for each other, because when your success is my success. We could talk about this all night, but it's a very important topic. So I want to challenge you tonight at the end of this course. Think of a mitzvah that you can do to get more in touch with your godly soul, so you reap all the benefits from it, even in the physical realm, in terms of relationships and any other area of life that we've discussed over the 6 weeks, the benefits of being a more soul-thinking person. Okay, now, that was all the why. Why forgive? The animal soul says it's better for your mental health. The godly soul says you don't even want to be in a fight. You want to be connected. Get together and figure it out. Aaron's giving you his kosher white lie advice, and you got to figure it out. But now, what is the how? How do we go about the process of forgiveness? So there is some two parties in a relationship, friends, family, husband and wife, parents and kids, whatever it is. And there's obviously some tension going on. What is the first thing you got to put out the fire? So let's look at putting out the fire. If there's continually whatever arguments going on, there's no room for forgiveness. You got to stop the fire. Now, sometimes stopping the fire takes a lot of you know, if you say, well, they said this to me, I need to give it back to them. That just reciprocates, and it actually escalates the argument. So one party is going to have to be a hero and say, I'm not going to answer back. Because you say, well, they said this, I'm only answering back to them. Yeah, well, they're going to answer back to you. And we'll keep on escalating. So the first key is you need to de-escalate the tension, and just one of them's going to be here and say, I'm not going to continue this argument. Not the whole tension will de-escalate. Where do we see this? Again, counter-arguing, counter-pointing is all just going to continue. So the first step is in text 5 West. This is again from the Talmud. I'm telling you, the Talmud's the best. Talmud, text 5, please take it away. If you're able to, yes.
The world endures only because of those who choose to remain silent during a quarrel.
So the Talmud is quite, thank you, Wes. The Talmud is quite strong about this. It says the world only endures because people that choose, and this is the kind of choice, you have to decide, decision. I don't want to be in a fight. Well, I don't want this to escalate. That would be a good enough reason. I don't want this to get worse. Not going to continue the argument. I'm not going to continue the dispute. So that is our first of 6 steps of forgiveness. One party has to purposely, consciously choose that they want to stop. Terminate active quarrel. Okay? If you look at 241, you see number 1, figure 6.1 is the process of forgiveness, has 6 points. The first one is to choose to terminate active quarrel. Now, this is quite interesting. In the interim, try to focus on positive things, good things. Now, once there's some quiet, now there's room for reconciliation. Now the time to speak, but that has to be judged very wisely. So listen to this. First, I got to tell you a quick joke. We always need a joke. We spoke about the animal souls, kind of like forgive and forget. So there was a couple, nice couple, but they always get in arguments. And sometimes it was getting very nasty. The husband did something very silly, and the wife constantly reminded him about it. And it came to a point where the wife said, you know what, I'm just going to forgive you. I'm going to forgive and forget. So, fine. But you know what happened afterwards? She was constantly reminding him that she was the one that forgave and forgot. So the husband turned to his wife. He's like, I want to tell you, you keep reminding me that's not much of a forgive and forget. She says, true, but I don't want you to forget that I forgave and forget. Anyhow, back to our story. Talks about kind of the satire of life, okay? So if you're forgiving, forgetting, it means real. Doesn't mean like you'll be the one to remind everyone that you're always one that forgave and forget. Then it's not forget. It's very much still there, and you're constantly kind of saying, well, I'm the great tzaddik here. You owe me one type of thing. Okay. So we have finally quiet in this quarrel, and now we have text 6. Michelle, did you read yet today?
Yeah, I did.
So Sam, you're going to read text 6. This is from Maimonides. We had him. Just quickly, Sam, did you like the story of Maimonides and the mouse? I thought you would have done that. Sam would have done that really quickly. Sam, you and Maimonides are on the same page in that. Sam, I want to say that I was just today at the police department to thank a very good friend. The deputy chief is retiring this Friday. Robert Wynn. He's the one who comes here often. He's a very good friend of ours. We're going to miss him. I tried to make sure we have a good relationship still with the police. So I went there, brought them donuts and all types of stuff. I got a special badge and everything else. Okay. So we went there and my daughter was very interested. She wanted to see the courtroom. He even showed her the cells they hold people in. He was really into the tour. It was a long tour, a very long tour. That's why we kind of rushed back here for class. But anyhow, and I was talking to them about the training dogs. So I just want to say they're amazingly dogs in the police department. Colony's a very large police department for a town. There's over 100 cops, active cops. That's a lot. It's actually the largest town in Albany County, but it is a big department for a town. Okay, Sam says the biggest one in the state. Great. It's off. It's near the airport. Near the airport, yeah. So if you ever got a traffic ticket, that's the court. So anyhow, my daughter's asking a lot of good questions. But then she's showing us the pictures of in the picture of the police officers is the training dogs. Not the training dogs, the dogs they've trained. And these dogs, these canine dogs, they're very expensive. And they're part of the police department. I thought that was beautiful. So there's wonderful things we could train dogs to do, and they can save lives, and they can benefit society in many ways. But still, that story is a little a cute story of the cat and the waiter. Okay. Sam doesn't think it's true. Okay. You don't think they could train a cat to hold a little tray? Okay.
You can't baptize a cat, that's for sure.
Okay. So let's get back to Maimonides. This is text 6. Sam's going to read it. And it is the step 2, which is speak up. Go for it, Sam.
Somebody wrong, or when someone wrongs us, we should not harbor silent resentment. Rather, it is a mitzvah to inform them and to inquire, why did you do such and such to me? Why did you wrong me in this way? This obligation is stated in the passage, you shall surely reprove your fellow.
So this is done in the right time, in the right space. But to hold on to resentment in your mind is worse. It's going to pop out sometime. It's not the right way to deal with it. You have to speak it out. So it may take a lot of courage, but you have to go over to them. So ideal situation is they should go over to you and say, can I please ask you to forgive me for what I've done? But apparently they haven't done that. You know why they haven't done that? Because whatever triggered them in the first place to have done that wrong to you. Either they're not knowing or knowing they've done something wrong to you. Sometimes they're a little malicious about it, God forbid, but that's going to happen. Or they simply don't even know they did something wrong. So important to find the right place, the right tone. This conversation of text 6 takes place after all the courses we've had so far, all the classes, about the tone, the way you speak, not abruptly saying, I don't know if you know this, but what you said offended me. Why did you say that to me? So in the right tone, the right framework, this is step 2. I got to say, remember I just mentioned some people know that they did wrong, some people don't know they did wrong. Here's a great story. This, Sam, I don't know if it happened or not, but the story of the Talmud Maimonides is Torah sources. But here we go to the story of this lady in the airport. She's really hungry. She's waiting for a flight. She goes to the counter. She buys herself a bag of cookies. She sits herself down and she reads a book, and then she opens up the bag of cookies and she starts eating cookies. And somehow the guy right next to her, starts with audacity, reaches his hand in and pulls out a cookie. She's appalled. She can't believe this. This isn't happening. It's not like, he ran to a corner and no one saw him and he's eating cookies from someone else. In front of her, right next to her. Each one takes a cookie, the other takes a cookie. Whenever she takes a cookie, takes a cookie. She cannot believe this. She's going to tell this to her kids and grandkids. This is crazy. She can't wait to tell her family about this ridiculous guy who was so off the charts that he's eating cookies from a bag she just bought. Comes down to the last cookie. And it was like kind of his turn. He breaks the cookie in half, hands her half. And she can't believe this. This is ridiculous. You know what happens? She gets on the plane. No, it's not Sam's story. No, she gets on the plane, she opens her bag, and guess what she finds? A bag of cookies.
He was eating this.
She was eating his bag of cookies. So what's the irony of the story? Sometimes you think, that person, they're off the charts. Come on. Don't they have a little seichel, a little Yiddish, a cup? What?
He was off.
And but not maliciously, right? He was a tzaddik. Imagine if you were that guy, you would think, what is wrong with this lady? Sam, I think that's not a true story, Sam. You can but it could have happened. I don't know. I just don't know if it did happen. But Sam has a whole other story. I have to speak to him after. Okay, back to other thing. But isn't that interesting? Sometimes you can say, I'm doing wrong, they're doing wrong. When you know the bigger picture, and this is just a funny story with cookies and an airport, but really in life it could be like this. Sometimes like, wow, that person, and then you realize the backstory, like, wow, they did that. That's amazing. You should ask them maybe for forgiveness. Anyhow, that's the story. The guy was extremely kind. He even gave half the cookie back to her at the end. Isn't that a great story? Okay. Now, So we've talked about speak up. Very important, and Michelle, you get to read this because you mentioned this, and Alex also mentioned this. No, actually, this is not this part. Okay, I'll read this part. We'll give you the other part later. So you can actually read this. What happens exactly? Seven's a very big topic. What if someone's not, the offender is not asking for forgiveness? So here comes the Alter Rebbe in his code of law. Alter Rebbe, whose yard site is this Shabbat, really Friday. The Alter Rebbe, founder of Chabad, wrote the Tanya, which is two souls, Hasidic psychology, all that, but how to serve God. But text 7 is from his code of law. He writes the following: we may, if we wish, unilaterally forgive an offending party without confronting them. If you want, without confronting them, you could. Indeed, this is an act of piety. Torah's directive to raise the matter is merely an insistence against harboring emotional hostility. So the rough text, you have to confront them, is mainly emphasizing don't hold on to this. Don't hold on to resentment. But if you want to not confront, that's up to you. But you have to actually, and I would say this is, again, with small things, this would be a good way to go about it, because they don't always want to, you confront sometimes, you create it into a bigger problem. You know what I mean? So, for example, if something's a very small thing, someone said something to you that offended you. So, if it's really harboring a lot, don't hold it in. If you're able to, and say, you know what? Maybe the person didn't mean it that way. Maybe I read the text wrong. And you can kind of think of, if you were in their situation, why would you may have done that? If you're able to, so with trivial things, don't blow them up and say, oh, I want to confront you about this. Well, first of all, never say I want to confront you, because you just confronted them in a negative way that will create negative feedback. But even if you're going to say, well, you said this to me, if the person's not in the right space, maybe he's tired, maybe he had a hard day, whatever it is, sometimes by confronting it, if it's a small thing, try to use text 7. Try to be able to say, let's look at the godly soul element. I want to be friendly with that person. I don't want this to become an issue between us. For small stuff, for trivial stuff, that may work, but when it's a bigger issue, you may want to, bring it up to them. But again, text 7 is very good for trivial, smaller things. Okay. I haven't been following along with the slides. Speak up is point 2. Don't harbor silent resentment. Get it out of you. Okay, that's that slide. Now, speak up. Also, you can quietly forgive if you can elevate yourself to a higher perspective, which is the godly soul's perspective. Yes.
Like to interrupt.
Sure.
Probably better for your health if you just feel the feelings, If
Ooh, good question.
You can't forgive, but it's very hard to forgive instantly, especially.
Great.
Severely they did wrong.
Right. So this is a great thing Michelle's bringing up. And I think it's important to emphasize. I said it before, but I think it's important to emphasize. This is forgiveness. This is not she said correctly. You shouldn't suppress your feelings. You should feel those feelings. Some situations may be a very much larger issue than something simple, but if it's either way, you have to feel the feelings, and then you can go through the process of, when you're ready, you say, I want to make amends with this person, then you can start this step 2. But yes, that is very important. I appreciate you bringing that up. You do need to feel the feelings, and it's not a magic pill. It doesn't go quickly. It's not a button you press. Forgiveness takes time of healing. Correct. Oops. Okay. Bump the gun. We're still in the middle of text. We're up to text 8. Owning up. Are you ready for this? So text 8 is a favorite of mine. We're going to ask Alex to read this from the previous Rebbe, the Rebbe's father-in-law. And it talks about self-justification. Now, we're all guilty from this to some extent. There's nothing wrong, we're regular people. But ultimately, if we're able to refine ourselves to be more godly through doing mitzvahs, to get more in touch with the godly soul, we'll do less of this. So often even if the offender says, I did something wrong, maybe I should ask forgiveness from them. But what happens immediately? Self-justification. Well, they did it to me last time. Well, X, Y, and Z. So you self-justify. You don't own up. The next part of forgiveness is the offender. If they can own up, this will be a big part of the victim party feeling that they're able to forgive. And we're going to watch a video soon that's going to show you sometimes people own up, but say, but the reason I did it was X, Y, Z. That's not really owning up, as we'll see shortly. Text 8, Alex, you read.
It is a human tendency to justify our wrongful acts, even when we are aware that our justification is not truthful. We tell ourselves that our actions were just and good, or we at least find an excuse for our wrongful behavior. Such self-justification is self-destructive. If we commit a wrong, whether it undermines our relationship with God or disrupts our relationship with a fellow mortal, then as long as we are aware that we behaved wrongly, we will eventually, when our hearts are inspired, repent. We will regret the past, uproot the former desire, and truly accept upon ourselves not to repeat such folly. All this can occur only if we acknowledge our error. Conversely, if we justify ourselves, we feel as though we did no wrong. In that case, we will fail to repent and remain tainted and sullied with sin. While self-justification stems from the natural soul, which is naturally animalistic.
So the justification, thank you, Alex, is from the animal soul. Again, keys to get more in touch with the godly soul, be other-centered, and therefore ultimately more happy in life is through doing mitzvahs. So let's see exercise on 245. Provide 3 self-justifications that one may generate after hurting someone else. Who can give me some? They deserve it. Anything else? Right. I'm just asking if, hypothetically, maybe. Maxine, what would be an example? Or Wes?
He did something wrong to me.
They deserve it because look what they did to me before. Very, very often common. Anything else?
Yeah, they should stop being sissies.
Yeah, thinking, wait, what? I offended them. I didn't say anything wrong to them. They're too sensitive. Something like that. Good. Thank you, Wes. Okay, so there's a lot in here. This next video is going to blow your mind. So this video will give examples of people avoiding responsibility. The example is given between a man and a woman. Enjoy this video. But the good thing is, even though it's short and sweet, and you can always look on the website. In my emails, I send you the website that has all the videos and all the slides. Okay, here we go.
I can't hear the video.
Good. We just heard that they can't hear the video. So we're going to try to do the share better. Okay. Before I go back in the video, I just want to tell me if you can hear the sound.
Avoid responsibility. We'll replay the scene several times.
Did you hear the sound?
It's good now.
It's good. So we're gonna go
Whenever
back to the
Noah
beginning of the
uses-
video. Here we go. You got to watch it again.
Yesterday, Noah and Mia argued over their parenting styles. As this disagreement escalated, Noah blurted out,
I don't have time for your emotional baggage. You're lucky I put up with you. Why can't you be like Jack's wife, Rachel?
Today, Noah and Mia want to put that silly altercation behind them. But Noah finds apologizing difficult and is using strategies to avoid responsibility. We'll replay the scene several times. Whenever Noah uses an avoidance tactic, we'll buzz him and delete that instinct from his emotional catalog. While this doesn't work in real life, seeing where Noah goes wrong can help us get it right.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Oh, come on, Mia. You're being overly dramatic. It wasn't a big deal. You're making a mountain out of a molehill.
Noah minimized his mistake. Let's delete that and rewind.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Believe me, I didn't want to be harsh, but your tone left me no choice. You pushed me over the edge.
Noah blamed the person he insulted. Delete and try again.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Are you serious? So many men treat their wives terribly. You should be thankful for how well I treat you. You have it good.
Noah highlighted greater flaws elsewhere to downplay his error. Delete.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Mia, you needed to hear it for your own good. The truth sometimes hurts. I only said that because I care.
Noah invoked a higher value to justify his error. Delete.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Yeah, it was unfortunate. But I had a rough day at the office, and my back pain didn't help. Understand my situation.
Noah blamed external factors instead of taking responsibility. Delete.
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
Mia, I didn't mean what I said. It came out wrong.
Perhaps a bit better, but Noah is still denying responsibility. They both know it was a jab, so denying it adds insult to injury. Delete. To avoid these common pitfalls in denying responsibility, recall that at your deepest identity, you are a divine soul, a part of God, the essence of truth. The next time a self-justification springs to mind, let your soul guide you. Ask yourself, is my justification accurate? What would God say? What does my soul say?
Noah, I was very hurt by what you said yesterday.
You're right, Mia. I'm really sorry for what I said. It was untrue and unfair, and I could see how much it hurts you. I want to be better, and I'll work on not letting my frustration get the best of me.
Noah takes full responsibility without making excuses, deflecting, or minimizing Mia's feelings. Well done. Recalling your inner divinity empowers you to acknowledge mistakes and take responsibility. This noble attitude ensures your relationships ring with only positive buzz.
Yes.
The whole beginning of this whole thing, what was the argument about?
They're
They're arguing about the parenting styles, how to parent their children.
By 2 words, it's totally missed there.
Yeah.
What's that word?
It was quick. Okay, go. But that was a great going through the steps. Now, we have finale of class. We're up to step 4, and that is, so the offender needs to take responsibility if you watch the video. Now, the next thing is, listen to this, placate, the mandate to placate. Text 9, I'm going to read this 9A, 9B together. Listen to this. One who injures another is obligated to provide the 5 kinds of compensation. In Torah, if you injure someone else, you not only have to pay doctor's bills, but you have to pay for their loss of work. There's a whole bunch of things. I'm not getting into the 5, but listen to the end of it. Even after providing these payments, God will not forgive until the offender requests forgiveness from the victim. Let's say someone injures another. Forgiveness is not granted by financial payment. You have to first go, even after you paid all this, to go over and ask for forgiveness. Now listen to this. Listen to this next text. 9b. From the Talmud, our favorite, we have the most Talmud today because we're getting ready for the Talmud on February 11th. Class will be on Tuesdays on February 11th. If you want to get the early bird special, I'll send it out in the email. You can sign up. One who vexes another, even if only verbally, needs to placate the victim. You need to placate. You need to ask forgiveness. Not only send them a present in the mail, or pay back the window you broke, or whatever it is. I understand, fix the window today. Okay. Now, text 10. Linda, you're ready for text 10. 247, yes.
More than one. If the victim is not mollified on the first try, the offender should return and attempt a second time using a different approach. If the victim is still not placated, the offender should return and attempt a third time using a third approach. After the third attempt, the offender need not pursue the matter any longer. If an offender desires to be extra stringent, additional attempts are permitted.
So let's say someone, if there's any damage or any legal or physical stuff, that has to be taken care of. But now you're asking for forgiveness. If you've done sincerely, asked them 3 times, you've done your obligation. You don't have to go around your whole life asking for forgiveness. You recognize you did something wrong. You owned up, right? You said, I did something wrong. I feel bad about it. I'm sorry. I know that hurt you a lot. What we just saw in that video. And then you say, can you please forgive me? And if they accept it, great. You have 3 times, according to Jewish law, you're mandated to still ask for forgiveness. After those 3 times, if you want, you can go up to the level of piety, but you've done your obligation. But this is not volunteering in Jewish tradition. This is Jewish law. You have to ask for forgiveness 3 times. It's not optional. It's a mandatory. Jewish law has a very high standard when it comes to reconciliating relationships. Next. Look at the next screen. The call to forgive. We're going to we'll do this number 11. Maimonides, Alex. Who just read? Alex, you just read before? Okay, Michelle, you read text 11.
Pleaded for the victim's forgiveness, and the victim knows that the offender has indeed repented of his sin and resisted a wrongful act. The victim should forgive.
Good. So let's talk about sometimes it's not sincere. They're saying, oh, forgive me, right? But did you notice the language that Maimonides used in that? Has requested and pleaded. That is a real show of sincerity. It has to be sincere.
Some people beg for forgiveness just to avoid punishment.
Okay, good, exactly. So some examples of non-apologies. You see, remember, see the exercise 249? Provide 3 examples of non-apology apology. What would be an example of?
He couldn't help it.
Good. Anything else? Listen to this. I'm sorry you feel that way. It's kind of blaming that you're the right. I'm really sorry, but it wasn't really a big deal, right? Okay, another minimizing. Okay, we kind of watch this in the video. So our class is going to end off with a few more important texts. We're going to be watching the trailer of the Talmud, but we're going to examine 2 stories in the Torah. I'm going to try to keep them extremely short. One story is Abraham and Sarah end up in the land of the Philistines. The king is called Avimelech. He actually takes Sarah, Abraham's beautiful wife, tries to be intimate with her, and God punishes him with incredible sickness. He realizes he's done wrong. He gives Abraham Sarah back, and then he asks for forgiveness. And let's read that in 12a. This is the first story. 12a. Wes, why don't you read 12a? Abraham and Sarah.
Where does the Torah teach us that a victim should not act cruelly by withholding forgiveness? In the verse, Abraham prayed to God and God healed Abimelech.
Thank you. So Abraham was asked to forgive. Now he could say, oh, you did something really wrong. And that was a really bad thing. It wasn't an offensive thing. It was outright wrong, right? The king, this non-Jewish king, had taken his wife. This was totally off. And Abraham, so Avimelech said, I'm giving you back your wife. I'm really sorry. And then, please, I have this illness now. Can you get rid of it? And Abraham didn't say, oh, you'll suffer this till your bitter death, right? He did, in fact, pray to God, and God healed Avimelech. So this is learning from the best, Abraham and Sarah. The next story with Moses. We're learning the difference between the 2 forgivenesses. But Moses is it's basically, as every good Jewish rabbi, shouldn't say that, but every leader, the people are kvetching to him. Say, hey, you took us out of Egypt. The food doesn't taste good here in the desert, and this and that, and we miss this and the other. He had saved their lives from slavery, and they're kvetching, as good Jews do. Bottom line is that eventually there's a plague that begins, and actually, believe it or not, people are dying in this plague. So people realize it's because they were against God's chosen man, Moses, and they asked Moses for forgiveness. So the same people that really were driving Moses as crazy are coming for forgiveness. And Moses does not withhold from them. He just says, I'll pray for you guys. So again, that's real forgiveness. People that were constantly telling bad things about Moses and complaining to him and telling their friends about Moses this, Moses that, and Moses forgives them. Text 12b, Maxine, please.
Moses prayed, Numbers 21:7. This teaches us that when we are asked to forgive, we should not cruelly refuse.
So you here have two stories. We're going to analyze the two stories. And I think it's also important why we're analyzing these two biblical stories in terms of our relationships also. So let's go through them. Look at this. The call to forgive. Look at your screen. Abraham and Sarah, right? This prayer, Abraham prays for the king. Next story is Moses. People are telling all types of stories about Moses, and Moses forgives them and he loves them. What is the main difference? Well, look at the bottom. Limited forgiveness for Abraham and Sarah and complete forgiveness. Why? See, Abraham was not going to continue a relationship with his king. He moved on and moved out of this land. He wasn't going to hang out there. So he forgave him, prayed that he wouldn't be ill, and moved on. It wasn't a long-term situation. But Moses was going to deal with these Jews continuing on. So those are two levels of forgiveness. And how much let's say I said example, like someone mentioned, I think Alex said, oh, well, I forgave my friend numerous times and he kept on repeating it. So I said, I'm not into this friendship, right? That's you're moving on. You're saying, I'll forgive you, but I'm out. But there are times when it's with close people like family. And I want to emphasize is that it's important that even sometimes it is challenging with family. So important. These are long-term relationships. Don't let small things spiral to bigger things. Don't let them become, and always look for ways to connect. And I think that's something that our society needs more of, certainly today. Now, there is an exception to the rule, and that is exceptions. But before we get to exceptions, 251, we're adding in number 5 and 6. You see 251? The number 5 is the victim accepts and the overtures and experiences an emotional shift, even if only minimally. And 6, the forgiveness matures and deepens with time. We said that before, it does take time. But here are exceptions. Text 13. This is from, again, the founder of Chabad, whose yard site is this week, the Alter Rebbe, 24th of Teves. And we're going to give this to who wants to read? Alex. Text 13, because this was something you talked about.
An exception. There is no need to forgive if you fear that some harm might befall you through granting forgiveness. After all, your own life takes precedence over the life of another.
Good. So ultimately, if you feel that forgiveness will cause some type of harm, you are able to say, no, I'm going to make a boundary. And this should be thought through, well and, maturely. Okay. We're now ready for the course conclusion. Our sages urged us to draw inspiration from, it's a very fancy word, I'm just called the reed. You know the reed, like a reed in the river? While navigating the process of reconciliation, and more generally across all aspects of our relationships. So let's look at this. What did we learn in our 5 lessons until today? The first was about empathy, right? Seeing the world through the other's eyes, feeling their experiences. Lesson 2 was about listening, true listening, skills of listening, Does anyone remember what lesson 3 was? You can look back in your book. Lesson 3 was about the art of disagreeing. We're naturally wired differently. If we're disagreeing, it's not a problem, that's normal. But to respect others. Lesson 4 was about focusing on the positive, the art of positivity in relationships. And finally, last week was a very interesting topic, was about lesson 5. Was about the right method of thinking about the others' well-being and actually trying to help them. Critique in the positive way, positive and constructive criticism. Now, we're going to finalize the course with this next point, which is a reed. What's good about a reed? A reed, it grows in the river. It's flexible, correct. This is again the Talmud, comparing different plants. A strong wood tree in Israel is the cedar tree. Not anymore. All right. Text 14. Linda, you get to read this.
Always be pliant, yielding as a reed, not firm like a cedar, refusing to cede. It was therefore the reed that merited the role of scribal quill for tefillin, mezuzah, and Torah scroll.
Hold on tight. Listen to this, my friends. This is going to be so interesting. We know what a reed is. And this is a poem that rhymes both in Hebrew and they even got it to rhyme in English. Right? That rhymed. Be like a reed, not like a cedar. It is therefore that the reed merited the role of scribal quill for tefillin, mezuzah, and Torah scroll. So we handwrite mezuzahs, tefillin, and all types of things. What should be used for the quill? So ideally, the Talmud says it should be a reed, because the reed has the flexibility. It's good for writing. Now, it is true that not everyone in different climates had the reeds at a river, right? So actually, Ashkenazic rabbis allowed a bird feather quill. But the Talmud says, ideally, you should be using a reed. Why? Because it has that flexibility. Therefore, that's true not only about relationships, but all parts of our life. That's why the Torah that we use, that guides us, the tefillin, and the mezuzah that guards our home are all written with a reed to remind us of. So it's actually interesting. Nowadays, a reed will ultimately fail. It will ultimately break. Or even a quill of a feather from a bird will ultimately break. So nowadays you can say, well, I'll make a metal one. A sofer, a scribe, that would be a better investment because it's never going to really break. I mean, you could break it ultimately also, but it's much more sturdy and long, durable. But we say no. The Talmud says use a reed. I think it's very, very telling. We are now, yes. Yeah, in those days they used reeds. So some sofers do. Ashkenazic, Sephardic sofers will use a reed. But Ashkenazic sofers over time will use mostly a feather from a bird. But again, the Talmud says to use a reed because of this. Now, we did our exception. If it's going to cause harm.
Lesson 6. The Art of Forgiveness. 1. Modern discussions on forgiveness often highlight its self-help benefits. In this model, forgiveness can mean utter disassociation from the wrongdoer to gain personal peace of mind. 2. The Torah promotes forgiveness as the tool of reconciliation, rooted in the belief that all souls are interconnected, like the limbs of a single body. Consequently, conflict should be resolved promptly to allow an already existing unity to express itself in daily life. 3. Accordingly, the more we align with our divine souls that naturally pull us toward reconciliation, the more we feel motivated to pursue forgiveness, whether we are the aggrieved or the offender. 4. The initial step in reconciliation involves ceasing hostilities, which often requires silence. Addressing underlying issues should wait until the heat of anger has subsided. 5. Jewish law advises the offender to acknowledge their fault and earnestly seek the victim's forgiveness, even multiple times. It instructs the victim to raise the issue with the offender and to be prepared to forgive following genuine remorse. 6. Forgiveness manifests in various degrees, from simply wishing no harm upon the offender to fully restoring the relationship. One might forgive minimally today, yet progress deeper as time goes on. 7. While offenders are always encouraged to make amends, the Torah advises the aggrieved that unilateral forgiveness is a noble act if it can be granted wholeheartedly. This teaching is especially useful for minor grievances. 8. Mastering forgiveness encompasses many of the competencies discussed in previous lessons.
So first of all, before we do our last video, thank everyone for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this. I gained a lot from this. This is one of those courses that is really there for us to implement in our lives. So I encourage you to do that. One small step you can do that today is by thinking how to become more soul seeking, soul looking at the world and at our relationships. And that is to get more in touch with our soul through any good deed. So choose one good deed tonight and think of how you could implement it this week. Without further ado, we're now ready for the Talmud trailer. There's 2 Talmud trailers. The one that they put in this video, I love, but the other one I like even more. I'll hopefully send it out in the upcoming email. Again, please, if you want the early bird, sign up as soon as possible. You need to make sure I have enough books for everybody. It's going to be very interesting, and it begins on Tuesdays at 6 on, what did I just tell you? On February 11th.
Master the book that defines Judaism. Decoding the Talmud. This is the Talmud. With 2 million words, 523 chapters, and 60 volumes, it's Judaism's monumental guide to life and study. This enormous work, compiled over centuries, records the evolving debates among the Jewish sages as they interpret the Torah and clarify its laws. It was banned, banished, and burned, but it has endured, and today its wisdom continues to instruct, intrigue, and inspire. Join us on a new 6-part crash course on the Talmud. Explore.
I wanted to catch that, what the 6 parts are. Okay, you'll see in the next video, but it's going to be amazing stuff.
Its history, method, and substance, and unravel its timeless wisdom for yourself.
Decoding the Torah.
Good point, Sam. It is related to the entirety of Torah, but it's going to be amazing stuff. So I want to thank everyone for joining us both in person. And there's a new addition to our adult education and general programming is, God willing, there will always be hot drinks in this room. So you can make yourself a hot tea, hot coffee, especially it's freezing outside. So I encourage you to warm up with the warmth of Torah and good deeds. Good Shabbos. Have a wonderful week, and we appreciate it. And I really hope to see you all again for decoding the Talmud. And again, it will be offered on Zoom as well as in person. Thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi. We'll see you.
Here we go. Maxine, how was it today?
Very insightful. A lot to think about.
Yeah, we don't have enough time to discuss everything, but there's a lot in this. Keep these books. Don't get rid of them. We love you guys. Have a wonderful day.
You too. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you. Thank you, Liz.